So, you want a leopard gecko, or do you? Welcome back to Red River Exotics. This is episode 2 in our series of the pro and cons. Today we're going to talk about leopard geckos. Last week we talked about bearded dragons. This one is our leopard geckos that we also breed. So these guys are a beginner reptile, which is probably why a lot of people get into these guys first off, and why they've been so popular for many years. It's not just a beginner, but a lot of experts, keepers also keep their leopard geckos just because they're an awesome, very awesome species of reptile. So we're going to go over 5 categories today: personality, handability, and lifespan. The second category is going to be setup, and then we're going to talk about the cost to purchase and set up and care for this animal. The fourth category is care of the leopard gecko. And the fifth category is availability, personality, handability, and lifespan. This is a pro and con. Where are you going? There's a pro because they are typically more handleable than some of the species of reptiles. However, they are a little bit more fragile than some of the larger species of lizards, like your bearded dragon. So these, since they are smaller, they are more fragile. They do have ability to drop their tail if they feel threatened. It is not as easily dropped like a crescent gecko, but it is a chance that could happen. So if you have a young child, they go up and grab the tail, especially if they scare the gecko, it has a possibility that they can drop the tail. It will grow back, unlike some of the species of geckos like your crescent gecko. It just will be a little bit more round and fat than what they have now. By the way, this is Hurricane. He's one of our breeder males. He is what we called a red diamond, which is a high tangerine and a tremper albino. He is absolutely gorgeous and is an absolute sweetheart, which is why I have him out today to show that these guys are handleable. But this varies between gecko to gecko. Just like the bearded dragons, like I mentioned on the first video, it really depends on each animal. And again, talk to the breeder. Lifespan, this is also a pro and con. These guys will live longer even than the bearded dragons, 10 to 15 years. So the second category is setup. This is pretty much in my eyes a pro, especially when you compare it to something like the bearded dragon last video. Their minimal setup is actually quite easy. 20-gallon front opening tank is the minimal size, but because of this, it's a smaller footprint than your 4-foot tank of the bearded dragon. So that's a big plus. You don't have to have the high heat like the bearded dragon. You only need the under the tank heater. So that is a plus. So less electricity, not as super hot bulb that's going to be baking up your room. So that is a plus. So overall, their tanks are pretty easy. Just you need a couple hides, which I will go more in depth with this with a care guide down the road. I just want to give you more of a pro and con. So the biggest thing to take on this is that the setup for a leopard gecko is very much more simple than a bearded dragon, which is why this is more considered a beginner reptile than the bearded dragon's more of an intermediate rather than a beginner, because there are so many different things you gotta make sure you have for those guys. Cost for these guys is the next category, and this is a huge range. So the cost on these, it's a pro and con. It really depends on how much you put into it. If you want to go very minimalistic, $150 for the setup. This includes your tank itself, your heat pad, their thermostat for the pad, all your decor. So this really depends on what you want and how big. Obviously, the bigger the tank, the bigger the cost. And just like with the bearded dragons, check out Facebook Marketplace. You can really get a good deal on this stuff. So just keep an eye on that. Make sure it is safe though. Take a good look over. Make sure there's nothing broken so they can't escape or injure themselves. So overall, $150, $700. $700, you're going like big tank. You're going like a lot of really nice decor. And that's like I say, $700 is like really high end. Typically $150, $200 is what your setup cost is going to be. So for costs of geckos, this is a huge range. I'm talking like $20, $30 at your local pet shop for your normal geckos. And I've seen them up to $2,500 on Morph Market. By the way, I'm not a sponsor of Morph Market. I just utilize them I've purchased and sold on Morph Market. So, but I've seen them on Morph Market up to $2,500, and that's just due to the fact that they are specialty morphs and lines and projects that people are doing. So there's a huge variety. Your typical gecko that you're gonna have that's not a normal, you're looking at around $100, $150. So that is a pro, because there's such a wide variety, and you can get some morphs, so you're not your typical normal gecko for a decent cost. So that for me is a pro. Care is the fourth category. Care, this is a huge pro. Well, could be a con. And the reasoning is care itself is actually very simple. As babies, you're feeding them every other day. As they grow up, 2 to 3 times a week, and that may be closer to 2 weeks depending on chunky your gecko gets. Some of my geckos, we had to scale back a little bit because they were getting a little too pudgy. So that is a plus. So you're really just feeding a couple times a week, checking their waters, picking out their food. The good thing about these guys versus the bearded dragons is they typically will literally poop in the same corner of their tank. So it makes it super easy to clean out, whereas bearded dragons will poop wherever, and including on themselves. So this is a huge pro for care. The con is some people do not like insects. They will only eat insects. So you're talking your dubia roaches, your crickets, your mealworms, your superworms. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're a little scorned about insects, you may want to look into something like a Uromastyx that will, most Uromastyx species will only eat grains. So depending on what you like. But overall, care, it's a pro. Very, very simple. The last category is availability, which is a huge pro. They're everywhere. You can get them at your local pet stores, at your local expos. You can get them online. They are everywhere. So the other good thing about this is, where are you going, buddy? The other good thing about the availability is that there are so many types of morphs, different colors, different patterns. And the breeders, us breeders, are really doing a really great job. So the guys, especially the guys that have been in the field for a long time, they are creating so many different projects. They're line breeding these guys to come up with the different patterns, brighter colors, and that's where you're going to see the higher price stuff, because it's a lot of time and patience to get these really neat geckos that they're producing. I'm not saying a normal is not as beautiful as the $2,500 one, because they are all beautiful in their own way, but there's a gecko out there for everybody. There's, your white ones, there's black and white ones, there's your high tangerine red diamond ones, there's ones that have like no pattern, there's ones that have spots all over or stripes. So there's a lot to choose from, which is a huge pro. So there, like I said, there's something for everybody. So is the leopard gecko the right reptile for you? I think it is. There's a few cons when it comes to geckos, but you know what? There's a lot of pros as well. And like I said, it really comes down to, is this the right animal for you? Thank you for joining Hurricane and I hope that this information has helped you to make the right decision, whether or not that the leopard gecko is right or not right for you. And for next time, I'm not sure what animal we're going to be doing next. It probably will be the hognose snake. So we're moving on from the lizards and going into one of our first snakes for our category of pros and cons. See you next time.